It all started on what I thought would be just another typical Monday morning. I had just returned from my night shift at the hospital, completely drained and desperate to crash into bed. But as I made my way down my street, something unusual caught my eye, halting me in my tracks. A strange car was parked right in my driveway. An MY driveway. At first, I figured it was a simple mistake. Maybe a neighbor had a guest who didn't realize they had parked on private property? No big deal, right? So instead of losing my cool, I parked on the street, something I rarely have the luxury of doing in this neighborhood. I then quickly scribbled a polite note and tucked it under the car's windshield wiper. Hi there. Just a heads up, this is a private driveway. Please don't park here. Thanks. Happy with my calm, friendly approach, I trudged inside, collapsed onto my couch, and within seconds, I was out cold, ready for some much-needed rest. Little did I know, this whole driveway issue was just getting started. The next morning, I walked outside, expecting to find everything back to normal, but no. There it was again. That same car, sitting there as if it had no idea when to leave. My polite note from yesterday had been crumpled up and discarded in the bushes. Cute. With a heavy sigh, I grabbed a fresh piece of paper and decided to give it another shot. This time, my message was a little more direct. Private driveway. Do not park here. This is your final warning. Feeling more confident in my assertiveness, I went on with my day, thinking surely anyone with half a brain would understand the message. But when I returned from running errands, guess what I found? You guessed it, the car was still there. At this point, I was done playing nice. The next morning, I resolved to confront the driver face to face. I was ready to be polite but firm, explaining the basics of property law for anyone who might have missed that lesson in school. As I stood by the car preparing for the conversation, the door of the house across the street swung open, and out walked her. You know that feeling when you just know someone's trouble the moment you see them? Yeah, that was Karen in a nutshell. She had the signature haircut, the forceful walk, and an air of entitlement so thick you could practically cut it with a butter knife. She spotted me standing next to her car and immediately snapped, "What do you think you're doing by my car?" "Your car's?" I said, trying to remain calm. "It's in my driveway. You've been parking here for days, and I've already left 2 notes. She crossed her arms, and a smirk slowly crept onto her face. "I only park here because the street parking is terrible. It's not like you're using it all the time. What's the big deal?" "Oh, the big deals?" I said, trying not to let my frustration show. "Let me count the ways. My elderly father, who relies on my driveway to get in and out of the house safely. My wife, who needs the space to park when she gets home from work. And me, who just wants to sleep without wondering if I'll have to park a mile away from my own home." But I kept it simple. This is private property. You can't just park here because it's convenient for you. Please move your car, and don't park here again. Karen let out a dramatic sigh, muttering something about selfish people before finally getting into her car and driving off. Victory, right? Wrong. 2 days later, I came home to find her car parked right back in my driveway, as if nothing had happened. This time, she had parked in such a way that my wife couldn't even get out of the garage. Furious, I knocked on her door, ready for round 2. When she opened the door, she didn't even seem surprised. "Oh, it's you," she said, like it was no big deal. "Yes, it's me," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "Your car is blocking my garage. Move it." Karen rolled her eyes. "Look, I'm not going to argue every time I need to park somewhere." The driveway was empty. "What's the harm?" "The harm," I said through gritted teeth, "is that this is my driveway, not a public parking lot. Move your car." She sighed again, this time more theatrically, and stomped over to her car like I'd asked her to run a marathon. As she backed out of the driveway, she yelled, "You're ridiculous. It's just a driveway." I wanted to shout back, "It's not just a driveway. It's my driveway." But I bit my tongue and let it go for now. A week passed without incident, and I thought maybe Karen had finally gotten the message. But then, one fateful Saturday morning, I woke up to find not just her car in my driveway, but a second car parked right behind it. She had invited a friend to join in on the fun. That was it. I snapped. I grabbed my phone, took a photo of both cars, called a tow truck, and waited. Watching the tow truck haul both Karen's car and her friends away was honestly one of the most satisfying moments of my life. As the trucks pulled away, I couldn't help but smile. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of Karen's epic meltdown. I wasn't sure what I expected when Karen found out her car was gone, but what happened next was beyond anything I could have imagined. I was sitting on my porch, sipping my morning coffee, when I saw her marching down the street. Her phone was glued to her ear, and she looked absolutely livid. Her face was as red as a sunburn, and her purse was swinging wildly with each angry step she took. I watched as she stormed up to my driveway, looking around as if trying to piece together some grand mystery. Then she began pacing back and forth like a detective at a crime scene, clearly trying to figure out what to do next. Finally, she spotted me sitting there, and her face twisted in irritation. "You," she shouted, jabbing her finger in my direction. "Where's my cars?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the moment before answering. "Oh, your cars?" I said casually. "It got towed." Her jaw dropped in shock. "You towed my car," she gasped, eyes wide. "Sure did," I replied, setting my mug down with a small, satisfied grin. "You were parked on my private property again." Her reaction? Well, let's just say it was far from calm or measured. She threw her hands in the air, let out an exaggerated wail, and began pacing even faster than before. "You had no right to tow my car." "None," she screamed. "This is harassment. I'm calling the police." I leaned back in my chair, utterly unfazed. "Go ahead," I said nonchalantly. "I'll wait." To my absolute delight, Karen actually called the police. And because I had nothing else pressing to do that day, I decided to stick around and watch how this would play out. About 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. Two officers stepped out, already looking mildly annoyed, as if they knew they were about to be dragged into some nonsense. Karen rushed up to them, waving her arms dramatically like she was directing air traffic. "Officers," she shouted, pointing straight at me like I was a criminal on the run. "That man right there." She looked like she was about to collapse from outrage. "He had my car towed for no reason. He's been harassing me. I demand you arrest him." The officers turned toward me, raising their eyebrows. One of them asked, "Is this true?" "Not even a little bit," I said, standing up to address them. "She's been parking in my driveway without permission for weeks. I've warned her multiple times, but she ignored me. So I called a tow truck. I have photos, videos, and even the towing receipt if you'd like to see them." Karen's face fell, but she wasn't quite ready to accept defeat. "He's lying," she screeched, her voice high-pitched with indignation. "It's just a driveway. You can't tow someone for parking in it." One of the officers raised his hand, signaling for her to stop. "Ma'am, a private driveway is private property," he said, his tone calm but firm. "If you parked there without permission, he's well within his rights to have your car towed." Karen gasped, as if she had just been told she was banned from her favorite coffee shop. "But I live here. I'm part of this neighborhood." "He's being unreasonable," she protested. The second officer, clearly trying to maintain his patience, asked, "Do you have any proof that you were allowed to park there?" Karen opened her mouth to speak, closed it again, then opened it once more. But no words came out. She looked like a fish gasping for air. The officer raised an eyebrow and said, "That's what I thought." Then he turned to Karen. "This is a civil matter, not a criminal one. You'll need to pay the towing fees to retrieve your car. And I suggest you stop parking in his driveway. If looks could kill, I would have been a goner." Karen glared at me with such fiery intensity, it felt like I was standing in the sun. But there was nothing she could do. The officers got back in their car and drove off, leaving Karen to stomp off in the opposite direction, muttering threats about how she was going to make me pay. For about a week, I thought that was the end of it. Karen's car was nowhere to be seen, and I allowed myself to believe, however foolishly, that she had finally learned her lesson. But Karen, being Karen, wasn't done yet. One morning, I stepped outside to find a letter taped to my front door. It was handwritten in Karen's neat but aggressive script. The letter read, "Dear neighbor, you've made things incredibly difficult for me with your petty and selfish actions. I've spoken to several other neighbors, and we all agree that you're creating unnecessary conflict by refusing to share your driveway. As a member of this community, I expect you to be more accommodating in the future. If you don't cooperate, I'll have no choice but to escalate this matter. Sincerely, Karen. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The idea that Karen was trying to rally the neighborhood against me was so absurd, it almost felt like a comedy sketch. So I decided to do a little investigating of my own. That evening, I made my rounds and asked a few of my neighbors if Karen had really been trying to recruit them to her side. As it turns out, most of them were just as fed up with Karen as I was. She came by last week, one neighbor told me. Kept going on about how unfair you were being, but honestly, I don't blame you. She's parked in my driveway before, too. Another neighbor chimed in. She's always causing trouble. Last month, she complained to the HOA because my kids were too noisy playing in our backyard. By the time I got home, I had a pretty good sense of where the neighborhood stood. Karen's supposed allies didn't exist. If anything, she was on very thin ice with most of the people around here. I couldn't wait to see what she would try next. After realizing that her neighbors weren't exactly backing her play, Karen decided to take matters into her own hands, or more accurately, into her clipboard. One sunny Saturday morning, I stepped outside to find Karen standing at the end of my driveway, holding what looked like a petition. She was stopping anyone who passed by, talking animatedly, and gesturing toward my house. "Excuse me," she started, her voice dripping with self-importance. "What do you think you're doing?" I asked, crossing my arms, a bit taken aback by the scene unfolding before me. Karen spun around, her face lighting up with that sickeningly sweet fake smile, the kind of sweetness that could make your teeth rot. "Oh, hello," she said in that overly saccharine tone. "I'm just collecting signatures for a neighborhood petition. We're trying to address some issues with, inconsiderate homeowners." "Inconsiderate homeowners?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You mean me?" Karen gave me a tight, almost strained smile, her grip on her clipboard tightening. "Yes, specifically you." I couldn't hold back a laugh. "You're circulating a petition about me? For what? Enforcing my property rights?" Karen shot me a scathing look, her voice rising. "You've been hostile and uncooperative. This is a community, and we're supposed to work together. But no, you had my car towed like some kind of tyrant. People like you shouldn't even live here if you can't get along with your neighbors." "Really?" I said, leaning against the mailbox casually. "How's the petition going so far?" Karen hesitated for a moment, gripping the clipboard tighter, clearly flustered. "It's going great. Everyone agrees with me," she said, her voice shaking slightly. I couldn't resist. "Mind if I take a look?" I asked, reaching for the clipboard. "Absolutely not," she snapped, quickly pulling the clipboard behind her back. "This is private." I raised an eyebrow. "Kind of like my driveway?" Karen sputtered in frustration, clearly caught off guard. "You're impossible. Just wait. You'll see how many people are on my side." And with that, she stomped off down the street, muttering under her breath. I couldn't help but shake my head in disbelief. A few days later, I got a text from my next-door neighbor, Sarah. "Hey, just a heads up. Karen came by with some ridiculous petition about your driveway. Thought you'd want to know," she wrote. Apparently, Karen had been pestering everyone within a 3-block radius, trying to get them to sign her petition. Her main argument? I was being unreasonable for not letting her park in my driveway, and the neighborhood should collectively encourage me to be more accommodating. But the kicker? Not a single person had signed it. Not one. "She's been parking in other people's driveways too," Sarah added when I stopped by to chat. "She tried to frame it like you were the problem, but everyone knows how entitled she is. Honestly, we're all sick of her." That was music to my ears. Not only was Karen's smear campaign failing spectacularly, but now the entire neighborhood was firmly on my side. I thought for a moment that maybe, just maybe, Karen would finally give up after her petition bombed. But I definitely underestimated her commitment to being a nightmare. One evening, I came home to something truly unbelievable. Karen had dragged 2 orange traffic cones and a cheap plastic no parking sign into my driveway. She'd set them up in a neat little barricade, as if she was actually trying to claim my property. The sign even had a hand-drawn note taped to it that read, "This driveway is now reserved for community use. Violators will be reported." I stared at the scene for a full minute, trying to process the sheer absurdity of it. Was this a bad dream? Had I somehow wandered into an alternate dimension where Karen actually owned the entire universe? Then I burst out laughing. "She's lost it," I muttered. When I showed my wife the scene, she was equally stunned. "She's completely off the deep end," she said, shaking her head. I snapped a few photos of Karen's little barricade, then calmly removed the cones and the sign, tossing them onto Karen's lawn. After that, I called the police non-emergency line, just in case Karen tried to escalate things even further. After Karen's failed community driveway stunt, I decided it was finally time to put an end to this nonsense for good. I was done dealing with her, and it was clear she wasn't going to back down unless I made it absolutely clear that her behavior wouldn't be tolerated anymore. Step 1. I installed a security camera aimed directly at my driveway. It wasn't anything fancy, just a basic motion-activated camera with night vision. But it was enough to get the job done. Step 2. I posted a new, straightforward sign at the edge of my driveway. No sarcasm, no jokes. It read, "Private driveway. No parking. Violators will be towed at owner's expense." Step 3. I preemptively called the tow company to let them know I might need their services again. They remembered Karen's car from the last time and assured me they'd be ready to act if necessary. It didn't take long for Karen to test my new system. One afternoon, I was at home when I received an alert from my security camera. Curious, I checked the footage. And sure enough, there she was, pulling up into my driveway once again. Surprised, there was Karen pulling into my driveway like she owned the place. I didn't even bother going outside to confront her. Instead, I called the tow company and let them do their thing. About 30 minutes later, Karen's car was gone, and I was enjoying a nice cup of tea on my porch when she came storming down the street. "Where is my sir?" she screamed, waving her arms like a lunatic. "Probably at the impound lot," I said, taking a sip of my tea. "Didn't you see the sign?" Karen's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "You can't keep doing this. This is illegal." "It's not illegal," I said calmly. "It's my property. You're trespassing. I warned you multiple times. And now there's a camera recording everything. Keep it up, and I'll file a formal complaint for harassment." She let out an incoherent scream and stomped off, leaving me with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in weeks. That was the last time Karen parked in my driveway. Word quickly spread about her latest towing fiasco, and the neighbors had a field day gossiping about it. Even Sarah, who usually stayed out of drama, admitted that Karen had become the neighborhood laughingstock. I still see Karen occasionally, but she avoids eye contact and scurries away like a scolded child whenever she passes my house. As for me, I finally have my driveway back, and the peace of mind that comes with knowing Karen won't be bothering me again anytime soon. With Karen out of my driveway and the rest of the neighborhood firmly on my side, life finally returned to normal. My wife and I could come and go without worrying about being blocked in. My elderly dad had easy access when he visited, and I didn't have to mentally prepare for a battle every time I came home from work. But the neighborhood wasn't done talking about Karen. It turned out that Karen's towing debacle had made her something of a local legend, but not in the way she'd hoped. The story of Karen's car getting towed twice spread like wildfire. People started referring to my driveway as the Karen zone, and the sight of the tow truck parked out front became a running joke. With Karen's reign of driveway terror officially over, I finally got to enjoy the peace and quiet I'd been craving. Every now and then I catch Karen walking past my house, her head down and her pace quick. Sometimes I'll give her a little wave just to see if she'll acknowledge me. She never does. If there's one thing I've learned from this whole ordeal, it's that boundaries are important, and some people will test them, no matter how clear you make them. Karen thought she could bully her way into getting what she wanted, but all she got was a hefty towing bill and a reputation as the neighborhood laughingstock. And if another Karen ever tries to mess with my driveway, well, let's just say the tow truck driver and I are on a first-name basis now.